The day Ethan returned home was the day the whispers started. He walked through the front door of his parents' modest two-story house with a duffel bag slung over his shoulder and a laptop in his hand. He had just quit his first real engineering job, a job that drained him, underpaid him, and left him feeling like a cog in someone else's broken machine. At 26, Ethan didn't have a backup plan. Just a gut feeling that if he didn't leave now, he'd never build the life he actually wanted. He thought his family would understand. He was wrong. "You left a good job," his father said that night at dinner, frowning over his plate of rice and stew. "You should have stayed until something better came up," his mother added, not looking him in the eye. His younger sister, Leah, just shook her head. "I hope you don't expect me to drive you around." It didn't stop there. His uncle, Gerald, who lived next door, found out within days. Gerald was loud, opinionated, and prided himself on being a real man who worked with his hands. He came over with a beer in hand, laughing. "So, the college genius is unemployed now? Welcome to the real world, son." Ethan just smiled politely and said nothing. But inside, it stung. The days turned into weeks. Ethan applied to jobs online, freelanced odd gigs for a few bucks, and started spending more time in the garage, watching tutorials, scribbling business ideas in a notebook, and experimenting with different platforms. He had a vision. A dream. An idea for a self-paced learning system built for technical skills, one that could help people like him learn, earn, and break free from broken workplaces. He called it SkillForge. But no one else saw what he saw. His family grew more impatient. "You're always on that computer," his mom muttered one morning. Leah started locking her car when she left, even though Ethan never asked to borrow it. Gerald would make jokes in front of neighbors. "Ethan's working on a startup, in the garage. Just like Steve Jobs. Except broke." People laughed. At family gatherings, no one asked Ethan how he was doing. His cousins talked about promotions, vacations, new apartments. Ethan sat quietly in the corner, drinking water and pretending not to hear the mockery. He wanted to scream. Instead, he kept working. At night, when everyone else was asleep, Ethan sat alone in the cold garage, hoodie on, light buzzing above, typing lines of code into his dying laptop. He had no money, no support, and no one cheering him on. But he had purpose. And sometimes, that's more than enough. Because deep down, Ethan knew something his family didn't. He wasn't jobless because he gave up. He was jobless because he was building something bigger than a job. And soon, they'd all see it. Ethan's days fell into a quiet, brutal rhythm. Wake up early. Skip breakfast, save the food. Check emails. 0 responses. Open SkillForge development dashboard. Review error logs. Fix a bug. Add a feature. Crash the whole site. Rebuild it from scratch. Eat whatever was left over from the night before, usually rice and beans. Shower. Watch tutorials. Apply for freelance gigs. Get ghosted. Every single day. He was building a startup with no team, no mentors, no investors, and no encouragement. Just grit. Meanwhile, the mockery escalated. His uncle Gerald started calling him Mr. CEO at every chance he got. "Look at him," Gerald would say, pointing with his chin while barbecuing. "Future billionaire right there, folks. We should all quit our jobs and follow our dreams too." His cousins joined in. "Yo, Ethan, where are you launching that multi-million-dollar empire? Can I invest with my lunch money?" Even his dad grew colder. One night, he knocked on Ethan's door. "I can't keep defending you to the family," he said. "You're not a kid anymore. You need to grow up." Ethan didn't respond. What could he say? That he was close to finishing his MVP? That he believed he could get users without spending on ads? That he thought, just maybe, he was building something that could change lives? It would only make the laughter worse. But in the silence, Ethan found fuel. He buried himself in work. Read every post on indie hackers. Studied viral product launches. Reverse-engineered email funnels. Rebuilt SkillForge's UI to look clean and modern. Created templates for trade workers, mechanics, junior devs, and more. At 3 a.m. one night, he added a new feature, instant certificates. He wasn't even sure if it mattered. But that single line of code would change everything. 2 weeks later, something unexpected happened. A mechanic in Ohio signed up. Then a small electrician school in Arizona. Then another. 3 new users in a week. Then 5 the next. They weren't many, but they were real. Ethan nearly cried when the first Stripe payment hit his inbox. You've received $39.99, SkillForge Pro. He took a screenshot. Printed it out. Taped it to the wall in the garage. The silence wasn't so heavy anymore. Still, he told no one. The house was the same. The comments were the same. His family still thought he was wasting his life. But they didn't know about the little spark that had started. They didn't see what Ethan saw. A platform that could help anyone learn real, practical skills, without student loans or gatekeepers. They didn't see the messages Ethan got at night. This is exactly what I needed. Just passed my test thanks to your course. How do I upgrade to a yearly plan? They didn't see the vision. And that was fine. Because soon, they wouldn't have a choice. Ethan had exactly $423 in his bank account. That included what little remained from his freelance gigs, a few SkillForge subscriptions, and a small payment from a client he never expected to pay. Rent-free in his parents' house, sure, but food, server costs, domain renewals, and software tools were draining him fast. He was running on fumes. But SkillForge? It was breathing. He now had 29 paying users. Mostly blue-collar workers, people like welders, HVAC techs, forklift operators, and junior electricians. Not his original target, but the people who needed SkillForge the most. They weren't glamorous. They weren't influencers. But they were loyal. And they told others. One morning, Ethan received an email with the subject line. Feature request, do you offer bulk access? It was from Mr. Avila, the owner of a technical training school in Texas. Ethan's heart jumped. Love your platform, the email read. Our students could benefit from this. Can we get 60 accounts at once? Ethan blinked. 60. That would be the equivalent of over $2,300 a month. He ran to his computer. His hands trembled as he replied, writing up a custom offer with a small discount. Within 48 hours, payment cleared. SkillForge now had 89 users. Something had shifted. Ethan used the funds to upgrade his server to handle more traffic. Hire a cheap but reliable customer support agent from the Philippines. Get a better logo made. And most importantly, launch a blog. He started writing short, powerful posts about trades, skill building, and independence. No fluff. Just value. 2 of those posts went viral on Reddit and LinkedIn. 3 small podcasts invited him to speak about alternative education. A niche tech YouTuber featured SkillForge in a tools you've never heard of video. And then it happened. A viral tweet thread from a blue-collar influencer with 90K followers. Tired of overpriced courses? Check out SkillForge. It's like Skillshare for trades. Built by one guy. Respect. Within 48 hours, Ethan had 1,000+ signups and 300+ new paying users. Back home, no one knew. His family still saw the guy in sweatpants who never left the garage. At dinner, his mom sighed, I wish you'd just go back to a real job. His uncle joked, still working on that startup, huh? I'm giving it 3 more weeks. Ethan just smiled. They didn't know he was now making $8,900 a month, and climbing. That night, Ethan bought something small to celebrate. A custom SkillForge hoodie. Embroidered name on the back. Black. Clean. Minimal. He looked at himself in the mirror, wearing it. No one clapped. But Ethan clapped for himself. Because now, the product worked. The growth was real. And the hate? That was just motivation. By the end of the third month, SkillForge was generating over $15,000 per month in recurring revenue. Ethan had upgraded everything. A full-time support rep. A junior dev to handle minor bugs. A new landing page built by a freelance designer. And an accountant, because taxes were now a real thing. But he didn't change his routine. He still worked out of the garage. Still wore the same hoodie. Still ate leftovers and boiled eggs. His family? They didn't notice a thing. In fact, things got worse. One Sunday afternoon, his entire extended family came over for a cookout. Ethan didn't want to go, but his mom begged him. Just show your face. You've been holed up in that garage for weeks. So, he went. The backyard was full of loud voices and cheap beer. His uncle Gerald was holding court again. You know, when I was Ethan's age, I already had 2 jobs and a fiancée, Gerald said, loud enough for the whole group to hear. Now all these kids want to be tech geniuses in their pajamas. Laughter. Ethan grabbed a soda and stayed quiet. His cousin Marcus, who sold real estate part-time, leaned in. Bro, not to be rude, but what do you actually do all day? Ethan smiled. I work on my startup. Marcus smirked. Still? That one word, still, cut like a blade. Still unemployed. Still dreaming. Still not enough. That night, Ethan didn't cry. He coded. He cleaned up SkillForge's onboarding flow, improved retention by 12%, and scheduled a follow-up with the trade school that had reached out 2 weeks prior. And while everyone else slept, he signed his first enterprise contract. $25,000 over 6 months. Paid up front. He sat there, in the dark garage, watching the zeros land in his business account. No applause. No cheers. Just the soft hum of the server running in the background. The next day, Leah asked to borrow $100 for a deposit on her new apartment. Can you even afford that? She scoffed. You don't even have a job. Ethan reached into his drawer and handed her $500. No explanation. Just a look. Because he didn't need to prove anything anymore. His family thought he was broke. In reality, he was sitting on a 6-figure business, a growing user base, and a product that was now considered best in class in his niche. That evening, Ethan opened a new browser tab. He typed Lamborghini Huracan 2022, custom order. He wasn't materialistic. He didn't care for attention. But he had a plan. And soon, his family would see it. Not because he needed revenge. But because they needed reminding. That success doesn't always shout. Sometimes, it roars. Ethan didn't buy the Lamborghini right away. Instead, he test drove it. Twice. The first time, he wore his hoodie and joggers. The dealership manager almost ignored him until Ethan asked to pay in full. The second time, he brought a business card with founder, SkillForge printed clean and bold. The manager smiled differently after that. The car was loud. Powerful. A machine that demanded attention. Ethan didn't want it to flex. He wanted it to speak. Speak for the years of being laughed at. The nights of working alone. The silence of being doubted by the people who were supposed to believe in him. He placed the order. Matte black Lamborghini Huracan Evo. Custom red leather interior. 5.2 LV10. $280,000. Paid in full. Back at home, everything was the same. His mom still reminded him to look for work. His sister still asked him to take out the trash. Gerald still joked across the fence, "You applied anywhere this week, CEO?" Ethan just nodded, "Yeah, something like that." In the garage, SkillForge was now at 3,800 users, and monthly revenue had hit $42,000. A trades podcast with 200K listeners had just featured the platform. Inbound messages were stacking up. A competitor had reached out with a buyout offer, 7 figures. Ethan declined. He wasn't finished writing the story yet. 2 weeks later, the car arrived. The transport truck pulled up outside the house. The matte black Lambo slid off the ramp like a spaceship. Neighbors peeked through curtains. Ethan stood outside in silence, hands in his pockets. Gerald walked over. "Someone rich in town?" he asked, joking. Ethan smiled. "Yeah. He lives here." Gerald blinked. Leah opened the door, eyes wide. "Wait, what?" Ethan didn't say a word. He opened the driver's side, slid in smoothly, and started the engine. The roar shook the block. He revved it once, calmly. No showing off. No burnout. Just a sound that said, "I did it. You missed it." He pulled out of the driveway and disappeared down the street. That night, he came back to a silent house. His mom met him at the door. "Is that really yours?" she whispered. "Yes," he said. "It's paid for." She looked away. "Why didn't you tell us?" Ethan shrugged. "Didn't think you'd believe me." He didn't say it out of anger. Just truth. The next morning, at breakfast, no one spoke. But Ethan saw the change. Gerald didn't joke. Leah didn't roll her eyes. Even his dad asked, "So, what's SkillForge again?" Ethan smiled, sipped his coffee, and said, "Just something I was building when you thought I was wasting time." He stood, grabbed his keys, and walked out. The silence he once feared? Now it was respect. The shift was subtle at first. No more jabs from Uncle Gerald. No sarcastic Mr. CEO from his cousins. Even Leah started asking questions, not insults, like, "So, how did you build it?" Like, actually build it? Ethan answered calmly, like a professor in a classroom. Because now, they were listening. SkillForge was exploding. After the podcast feature and a viral LinkedIn post about learning without loans, Ethan's inbox flooded with inquiries. A construction firm wanted 500 licenses. A military vet nonprofit offered a long-term partnership. And a tech blogger compared SkillForge to Coursera, but built by a guy who actually gets it. Ethan didn't feel like he was running a startup anymore. He felt like he was running a movement. A platform made for the overlooked, the underfunded, the ones who never got a second chance. He began hiring faster: support, devs, marketing, even an operations lead. Selena, a junior UX designer from Twitter, DM'd him saying, "I want to help build what you're building. I've never seen anyone make blue-collar tech look cool." He hired her on the spot. And SkillForge? It crossed 10,000 active users. Monthly revenue hit $89,000. Profitable. Sustainable. Founder-owned. But the biggest change wasn't in his Stripe account. It was in the house. One evening, his dad knocked on the door to the garage. Ethan opened it, expecting another awkward talk. Instead, his father held up a dusty old folder. Ethan's resume. "I was wrong," his dad said. He handed Ethan the folder. "You don't need this anymore." Ethan stared at it. Then set it on a shelf. He had kept it all this time. For what? A backup plan? Not anymore. 2 days later, his mom invited the entire family over, for him. A dinner to celebrate Ethan's success, she said proudly. They came in droves, cousins, uncles, neighbors, all dressed too nice for a backyard barbecue. Even Gerald wore a collared shirt. Ethan pulled into the driveway in the Lamborghini. This time? No stares. No scoffs. Just applause. Leah ran up and hugged him. His dad slapped his back. Gerald raised a beer. To the kid who made all of us eat our words. Ethan smiled, not out of pride, but peace. He didn't crave their approval anymore. But it was nice to finally receive it. Late that night, after everyone had gone home, Ethan sat alone in the garage again. Same chair. Same desk. But this time, no hoodie. No hunger. No fear. Just a man at peace with the journey. He opened his laptop. Not to escape the world, but to build more of it. 2 weeks after the family dinner, Ethan received an email that made him lean back in his chair. Subject: Acquisition Interest, Confidential. From Head of Corporate Strategy, Edutech Global. Edutech Global. A massive e-learning conglomerate with dozens of platforms under its belt. They wanted a meeting. Ethan forwarded the email to his lawyer. His first instinct was caution. He hadn't built Skillforge just to sell it. But he wasn't naive either. Sometimes, the right deal could accelerate the mission, not destroy it. The video call happened 3 days later. Their offer? $12 million. Straight cash. They praised Skillforge's branding, growth, user retention, and the undeniable emotional story behind it. Ethan asked questions. A lot of them. Would his users be forced into higher pricing tiers? Would the platform stay true to its vocational roots? Would he retain creative control? The answers were vague. Those details would be discussed post-acquisition. He knew what that meant. Once the ink dried, they'd gut it. So he made a decision. He declined the offer. Respectfully. Firmly. Skillforge isn't for sale. Not unless your check has purpose attached to it. The news stunned the execs. No counteroffer. No fight. They simply said, "We understand," and left the meeting. Ethan closed his laptop and exhaled. He had just turned down $12 million. And felt more free than ever. He posted a short update on Twitter. Got offered 8 figures to sell Skillforge. I said no. Because I didn't build this to sell out. I built it to fix what school never did for people like me. It went viral. Not because of the money, but the message. People wanted ownership. Vision. Independence. Ethan was no longer just a founder. He was becoming a symbol. A few days later, something even crazier happened. A former high school teacher emailed him. I remember you, quiet, smart, always building something. We're starting an entrepreneurship club at the school. Would you come speak? Ethan stared at the screen. This was the same school where teachers told him to stay realistic. The same place he once gave a class presentation about building a software company, and got laughed at. Now, they wanted him as the example. He accepted. Not out of pride, but purpose. Because the same way his family once laughed and later clapped. Those students deserve to see what happens when you bet on yourself. The high school hadn't changed much. Same faded walls. Same squeaky floors. Same broken vending machine in the hallway near the gym. Ethan walked through the entrance wearing a black Skillforge hoodie, jeans, and fresh sneakers. No Lamborghini today. No flash. Just purpose. The entrepreneurship class was packed, 40 students, some sitting on the floor, others leaning in from the doorway. Word had spread fast, the guy who turned a garage into millions is coming to speak. The teacher greeted him with a handshake and a humbled smile. We really appreciate you coming, Ethan. It means more than you know. Ethan nodded. Thanks for asking. I used to sit in this exact room, dreaming of this moment. He took the mic. Looked around at the sea of skeptical and curious faces. Then he said, you don't need permission to build something great. You just need the guts to look stupid for a little while. The students locked in. Ethan told them everything. How he quit his job with no backup plan. How his own family mocked him. How he coded alone in a cold garage. and how he made his first $39.99 from a stranger and never looked back. He showed screenshots. His striped dashboard. His first tweet that went viral. The garage setup. The SkillForge interface. They weren't impressed by the money. They were inspired by the process. During Q&A, a student raised her hand. Weren't you ever scared that you'd fail? Ethan nodded. Every day. She hesitated. So why didn't you stop? He looked straight at her and replied. Because I already knew what failure felt like. Being broke. Mocked. Ignored. That's failure. Building something, even if no one sees it yet, that's the opposite. That's progress. The room was silent. Then applause. The kind of applause that didn't just mean well done, it meant you changed something in me. After the session, students crowded him for advice, selfies, and questions. The teacher pulled him aside. You have no idea how much impact you just made. This school's been needing something like this for years. Ethan just smiled. I needed it back then too. So I figured I'd show up as the person I wish I had. That night, he returned home, pulled up SkillForge's admin dashboard. New user registrations, plus 227. Churn rate, 2.1%. Net MRR, $92,450. Numbers were great. But his heart? Even fuller. Because for the first time, Ethan realized. He wasn't just building software anymore. He was building belief in people who didn't think they had a shot. Ethan had one more thing planned. It had been nearly a year since he launched SkillForge from the cold, dusty garage in his parents' home. A year since he was mocked, dismissed, and treated like a joke. Now, he wanted to create a memory. Not to brag, but to leave a mark. He called the nicest restaurant in the city and booked out their private dining room. White tablecloths. Ambient jazz. $200 steaks. The kind of place that didn't list prices on the menu. Then he sent out the invitations, to everyone. His parents. His sister. Uncle Gerald. The cousins who laughed. Even the neighbor who once said, I hope your little website works out. The invitation said. Dinner's on me. No questions asked. Just show up. They all came. Dressed up. Confused. Curious. When they walked in and saw Ethan waiting near the entrance, the Lamborghini parked outside, and the waitstaff referring to him as Mr. Carter, the mood shifted. No one laughed this time. No one made jokes. They took their seats. They listened. And as the first course arrived, Ethan stood and raised his glass. I wanted to say thank you, he said calmly. Not because you supported me, but because you didn't. Your doubt made me disciplined. Your silence gave me focus. And your laughter taught me how to clap for myself. So tonight, I wanted to repay you with a dinner you'll never forget. Because success isn't about getting even. It's about getting ahead, and taking the high road when you arrive. Silence. Then Gerald stood up slowly and clapped. Leah followed. Then his dad. And before Ethan knew it, his entire family was on their feet, clapping for the man they once laughed at. That night, they toasted to Ethan. To SkillForge. To belief. Persistence. And the idea that the one everyone ignores might just be the one who changes everything. When Ethan left the restaurant, he sat alone in the car for a moment. He didn't drive off immediately. He just sat in stillness, headlights off, engine quiet. And whispered to himself. They'll never forget this night. Not because of the car. Not because of the money. But because they finally saw him. Not as the failure in the garage. But as the man who never gave up. Ethan didn't slow down. He didn't retire. Didn't disappear. Didn't post cryptic tweets about stepping back. He built. SkillForge crossed 20,000 active users and expanded to 3 continents. He added live training sessions, mentorship pairings, and job placement features. The platform wasn't just for learning anymore. It was a launch pad for second chances. But the Lamborghini? He barely drove it. Not because he didn't love it, but because he didn't need to prove anything anymore. That car had already spoken. Now he was quiet. And focused. One day, he got an email from a single mother named Keisha in Detroit. I got certified through SkillForge. Got a job. Moved out of a shelter. My son's sleeping in his own bed for the first time. Thank you, Ethan. You saved us. He stared at that email for a long time. Not because it surprised him, but because that was the point all along. Not the Lamborghini. Not the revenge. The impact. Ethan began mentoring other solo founders. He funded scholarships through SkillForge. He partnered with trade schools that had once rejected him. He helped people like the man he used to be, broke, doubted, underestimated, build something that mattered. 1 year later, he was invited to speak at the National Builders Conference. The keynote speaker. He stepped onto the stage in front of thousands. The screen behind him lit up with one sentence. My family mocked my jobless life until I showed up in a Lamborghini. The crowd laughed, not at him, but with him. And he began. They laughed when I had nothing. But I kept building. I kept showing up, even when no one clapped. And when the day finally came, I didn't show up to rub it in. I showed up, to remind them what resilience looks like. Applause shook the room. Ethan smiled. Because he wasn't just a success story. He was a blueprint. A man who took every ounce of doubt and turned it into fuel. And now? He wasn't driving toward the finish line. He was the road. Moral of the story. Never let someone else's laughter define your limits. Just because no one claps for your dream, doesn't mean it isn't worth chasing. Sometimes the people closest to you won't believe in your vision, until they can't ignore it anymore. Real success doesn't need revenge. It just needs results. And when you finally arrive, don't shout. Let your success make the noise.